Welcome to the Practice Podcast, conversations probing the nature of practice. I'm your host, Dave Fearon. Well, it's an interesting coincidence that the person with whom I've had this conversation today, Patrick Trottier, is all about working in comfort in the unknown, going to where people have never been before, which I guess is true of the future for all of us. But it's interesting to me because I'd never met Patrick before we started recording. He's in Spain, I'm not. And his LinkedIn profile suggested a very interesting person who's interested particularly in what he calls emergent organization development. And I will just editorialize that to emergent personal development as well. But the key word is emergence. And we're going to talk quite a bit about that. In fact, by the end, I thought, boy, I want to have another conversation on your behalf, as well as my own interest with Patrick, because there's an awful lot there for someone who's been working throughout his whole career in this area of emergent change. So this is Patrick Trottier. Well, this podcast conversation is definitely global because Patrick Trottier is in Spain and I'm not. I'm in good old Connecticut. And it's taken a bit of time for us to jibe to make sure this meeting is happening. It's our first meeting, and I don't think it'll be our last because I'm already quite fascinated and just becoming a little bit acquainted. But Patrick is a practitioner with a very big P. He believes, from what I can hear so far, that until you're doing something, you don't really know what you know. And what the something he's been doing, along with creating organizational affiliations for people who are interested in change, and particularly changing organization development, thinking, ideas, material, is what I found when I looked at his posts on LinkedIn. Patrick, welcome. And how close am I to describing you? You can edit it all out right now and tell me something different.
You're right on the button. I would just add emergent change, which is quite different than the traditional thinking of change.
Let's talk about that then. It is a key word. I know you even have it in your email, emergent.
The difference? Traditionally, we think of change, and I'm trying to say this very simply, because I'm a simple guy. Change is usually seen as moving from A to B in OD, and that's been the 20th century thinking, from a static A to a static condition of B. And they all have great plans, and they have great projects, and it becomes work. And it becomes another part of work, and it becomes a part of survival. Here we go again. Well, by the time they may get to B, the world has probably changed to F because of our rapid change, our complexity of change, the degrees of change. We've seen the disruptors of change. And in the 21st century, that complexity and the degree and the rapidity of it is going to heighten. Yeah. Mostly because of technology, because of immigration, because of resources, because of a number of things. Climate change even is going to change organizations completely. Generative norms, expectations, things will change at a more rapid pace.
And we can toss in a global pandemic, which is still going on.
Yes.
Which has certainly tossed a lot of things upside down.
Yeah. That's right. That is a good example of a disruptor. And do we learn from disruptors, or do we try to hang on to the old status quo and sort of survive those disruptors and then go back to the status quo?
Yeah.
So that's something that has been a challenge in the thinking of organizations around COVID, as an example.
You're emergent then too. From the way I hear
everything
you,
is
that you're aware that very aware of change. By the way, Peter Vail coined the term permanent white water back in the late 80s, where he said in his first book, change is changing. And now, many, many decades now later, Peter would be somewhat stunned by the rate of change, and he would be nodding his head right now, listening to you, Patrick. So we have that feeling that we could go back after it's over, whatever it is. And you're working with yourself and with people all the time. And frankly, I would love to feel I could go back to some of the ways that it was. But I'm also intellectually aware that that's fallacy with a big F. So with emergent being the big word on our screen right now, what do we do if we can't go back?
Well, that's an excellent question. And in a different way of thinking of the human species, you bring up the emergent, the law of emergent change, of transformation. I probably didn't say that right, because I write this down and I can't remember what I write. But here it is, and it's very simple, and it goes to that point. When a person, group, or organization creates a comfort zone with the unknown greater than the known, then change happens naturally. We start exploring, our curiosity comes up, we ask new questions, we look around the corner, because now we have a comfort zone with the unknown, so we can go there easier. And so change happens within our thinking because that curiosity, experimentation, different ways of thinking, and that starts changing our mindsets by going through that kind of process. So we shift our mindsets and we see things differently. And if we see things differently, we'll create things differently. How we see things is what we create. If our comfort zone with the known stays in status, then we will always create the same thing. If we get a greater comfort zone that's greater than the known, create a comfort zone with the unknown that's greater with the known, we will create new things. We'll see things differently. Our perceptions will change. We take in new information, and I've written about 11 things that are actually part of the brain, which I'll call conduits, that help us shift our mental framework. And when I talk about mental, it's not just mental as we usually talk about. I'm talking about our emotional and cognitive framework.
Yeah.
Because that's the whole person. And many times, because we don't think about it much, our emotions are our filters of how we perceive. And a lot of times our emotions actually decide our decision-making, but we think it's our cognitive.
Now, I'm thinking emotions right now, and I'm honestly following you, but I'm realizing that if you're going to be shifting, a person or you, all of us, are going to be shifting to being comfortable with the unknown.
Right.
Intellectually, the brain, okay, I can make that picture in my head.
Right.
But emotionally, I'll be scared as shit.
Yes, but that's where the comfort zone comes in.
That's it. And your word comfort is, to me, rooted very deeply in our way we manage our emotions and manage us, or we manage our emotions. So when you're working with that aspect as a person or with others to help us, how do we work that comfort? Discomfort is comfort.
You don't manage it first. Okay. It's not something to be managed. Like I can put it in that box and that box and that box. No. I call it conscious discipline, awareness of self. Because yes, in the beginning, it's just like riding a bicycle when you're young. You're going to fall off. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to run into the fence or something. So that conscious discipline is, yes, okay, I'm going back there. Okay, I can then choose. I can choose not to go back there because I'm conscious of it. and I can relax myself and move into a consciousness that it's okay to explore the unknown. And I need to share this. That's natural for humans. And it's natural for babies. This has been proved. It's on my website, the research on that. But once we get into parental guidance or parental practices, once we get into school, once we get into work,
corporate,
by that time it's wiped out.
Yeah.
Because we need to be managed. We need to predict. We need to be good soldiers. We need to step to the process that we know, and that makes us secure. So that's been wiped out over years of traditional practice that puts us into a nice little comfortable box.
Yeah.
But we've learned that, and whatever we've learned can be unlearned and move to another, let's say, more natural part of being human.
So it's not so much taking ourselves and making ourselves different if we were to move into the comfort with uncertainty. Right. It is finding the part of ourselves that's always been comfortable with uncertainty.
Right.
It's there. It's just been, I don't know, stunned into silence.
Yeah. And learn to play with it again.
Yeah, exactly. It's almost, I've been around moments like that. I've had a few, and it is a tremendous release. And of course, there's also the default position that makes us kind of snap back.
And that's okay. You know,
but maybe we don't snap back exactly like we were before. Maybe
maybe not.
Incrementally getting ourselves back to our baby state.
and each individual is different. And this brings up work environments, and work design and organizational design. So how does that keep us in that comfort of the known and predictability? Or how does the design of organizations and work and relationships manifest the comfort zone to move into the unknown as an organization and explore and be curious and have a space to speak and tell stories? How do we design a number of things? And in the Emergent OD platform, I've sort of mapped that out, not in a linear fashion, but certainly starts with practicing and being comfortable with the unknown. But that goes throughout the whole process. And I'll give you an example. Okay, technology. How do we design technology as an open system rather than a closed system that gives power to a few? So how does the design of information and information display work with the brain so that it manifests a comfort zone with the unknown and starts developing co-creation, self-organization, so that it moves from the hierarchy of control to a network of collaborative networks of collaboration. So how do we design technology to manifest that? Well, I've done that. I've done that since the middle 1990s.
Since the web became a web.
Yeah, but it's more within an organization. And as an example, I was working in California and San Francisco in a company called Rome Organization Company, whatever they were called. And they made telephones and telecommunications at that time. And I was working at Charles Schwab and Bank of America. And they saw me and they started talking to me. And their senior management asked me one simple question. How do we get our people to think as we do in business? That this is a business and understand the whole organization, how it works together, rather than just doing the task. And I asked them back, well, what helps you? And they said, well, information.
Yeah.
So I said, well, let's experiment. Let's open the information systems to everybody so they can see finance, they can see marketing, they can see operations, they can see whatever, just the same reports you get. What happened is people started thinking differently at a higher level. Well, first thing they did was finance. Everybody wanted to go to finance because they could create their own dashboard. They wanted to see the finance. What are we contributing?
Open book, we used to call that.
Yeah, an open book.
Yeah.
And it was organic. They basically want to know what it cost to do this, what's it costing the company.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they went to work with cross-departmental meetings, they asked bigger questions, but they also started understanding marketing and what they had to go through. Mm-hmm. But they also started to understand where the gaps were with what is marketing, and what is operations actually putting out in line with product or service. Mm-hmm. So these questions were at a higher level. They were no longer taskmasters. And within 6 months, the whole culture changed.
That's
just
incredible.
Because they opened up systems of information.
So the senior, in quotes, I know this is the jargon of the day, the senior folks who had all of this information and answered to your question with it's information that does it. They had the courage, I would guess, the humility to actually open the information line. Yeah. That was leadership.
That, yes, and they took a risk, and that's what leadership does. They want to experiment because they asked the question. It was their question.
Yeah,
I just helped them fill in the answers to their own question, and the light bulb went on, the curiosity went on, and they took a risk.
Over time, did that openness persist, or
yes.
Was there some setbacks? I assume some setbacks.
Well, there's always information, especially HR information, that you can't divulge.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. But this is more of an operational side, operational finance. And, in fact, it grew and it became part of the fabric of how we work together. Mm-hmm. So, there wasn't any drawback to it.
It must have been thrilling for you to see that emerge, to use the word we started with.
Yeah.
Now I want to ask you, since I'm just getting acquainted with you too, that early time must have put some real fire in your belly for wanting to not only do more practice of this sort yourself, but also start sharing your learning your lessons more widely, at least through talking with other people of like mind. There's got to be a few people who actually, like you, thought that it could be better to be in a world of uncertainty than to be tucked down in the trench of certainty, in the fallacy of certainty, by the way.
It's a good question. I wasn't ready for that because I didn't learn enough.
Okay.
In fact, in my graduate work, I did 7 internships in order to get something under my belt in order to bring value. Mm-hmm. I'm not ignorant enough to know that I know something. Mm-hmm. So at that time, like 2011, I started writing. Mm-hmm. So a long time later, because I'm a busy guy. I don't have time to sit down and write. In fact, I don't know enough to sit down and write. I'm not an academic, and I'm not a professional writer. Mm-hmm. So no, at that time, I didn't even know what to share. I'm learning without knowing I'm learning. And that was fine with me because I was moving into the unknown. Mm-hmm. But it worked, and I started forming a pattern of OD that was my practice. And I wasn't out there to flout it or sell it or market it. No, I just wanted to make a difference and learn from my clients. And at that time, during the 90s, there was a lot of experimentation going on.
Yeah.
It's different now.
Yeah.
And also, I didn't write anything to think it's the panacea of anything or the answer. Somebody writes a book and everybody jumps on it, mm-hmm. and then it changes. Mm-hmm. That's not my style.
Mm-hmm. So what you're looking at then, because you are learning in a unique way, personally you're learning, but also you're learning what it's like when people are willing to be uncertain and actually relish it and love what they're seeing. So there's something there that we would like to know. We who are always looking for the next Patrick Trottier, who's going to say, hey guys, take a look over here, or have you thought of this, or pointing out. And I suspect that when I noticed on LinkedIn that you're developing kind of a conversation, a network of conversation, that's something you're doing.
A network of conversation? Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm working basically. I was invited into Dr. Justin in Zimbabwe of the Center for Organizational and Leadership Development, COLD. Mm-hmm. And that gave me a platform. They want to bring my work into Africa because they've been through so much and they've talked to so many people, and they've been very, very delicate in who they and what they want. They want to see something different because they know the difference. So that was 1.5 years ago, and I've been very honored by doing that. So it gave me a platform to speak and share. And the thing is, I don't have the answers. I don't even have all the questions because the questions keep changing. Mm-hmm. So and I hope long before I'm gone, this is continually developed with new ideas, and it practices what it is, and that is emergence itself.
Yep.
So hopefully, as everybody does, bring something to the world, and that can expand and live. And I talk a lot about, see how things are connected. I talk a lot about living cultures and living visions, not a future vision, because the future is not here. But how do we live our culture now? How do we live the vision now? Because that's all we have is now. So I stopped doing all this future stuff 25, 30 years ago. Mm-hmm. The normal mission. I don't do missions anymore.
Vision, mission, yeah.
Yeah, future vision, all of that stuff. I've had executives take the plaques off the wall, those nice little cute statements of our values and our mission, and throw them in the garbage. Because unless they're doing it, it's a waste of time. Because I noticed that employees would come up and look at it, read it, that's not my experience.
Right.
And so I've got them to very simply, we're getting into culture now. Mm-hmm. Very simply, culture is what people experience day to day, of which norms will form. Mm-hmm. If you want to change it, it's really simple. Don't make it a project. Just design your organization to give new experiences, and new norms will form. In fact, forget the leaders. People all over the organization will form the organization themselves, and new norms will form. Because if you've ever studied the informal organization, that's really where the action is. That's really where reality is. That's where people co-develop without the hierarchy. And that's how work really gets done.
I think the folks who work in the titled positions who understand and respect and value that would be happy to hear you say it, because the notion of the informal organization being the enemy of the formal is a very bad idea that's been around in various forms. And indeed, the organizations that seem to be really rocking and rolling in change don't really make a lot of distinction any longer between hierarchy and informal, but they do have one challenge, big challenge, and that is to have people working with them who are up to it. So we've got a global workforce, and a lot of people who've been convinced through that parental schooling process that the way that they're going to make a living in life is to do what they're told. Yeah. And at the same time, we need an organizational organizational revolution, really, of for people to come in and think and feel and explore and talk with each other in all kinds of ways. That
good conversation now.
Yeah. And so I'm looking at it in part as someone who's been, in quotes, preparing people for the world, throughout my career, teaching organizational leadership and change. But I've never felt satisfied that we've sent out what Peter Vail called a superb learner.
Yeah.
And that's where Peter and I really jive most. We believe that any kinds of formal instruction, including training, including the way a book is written, which I did with Peter, is we want to be sure that the person who is there in that presence, in that moment, is gaining learning acumen, learning love, if you will, hey, I never knew that before. I never thought of that before. I never saw that before. To me, that's the kind of emergent learner too. If we emergent organization and emergent learner together, hey, we could start a hell of a company.
That's right. And in addition to what you're saying, in the platform, self-agency is critical. Mm-hmm. That people have a different experience that manifests that they do have influence. They do have a voice. And a lot in my work and my approach, people that sat back and basically have never had a voice and they like doing a task, eventually they come around. They start looking like something's different here and it's real. And they go, what's going on? They start talking in the hallways. And some of their naturalness starts coming out, that curiosity again, what's going on? This has to do with the whole change of concept of leaders and leadership. Like, what's going on with leadership? How many billions have been spent for 100 years, 200 years on leaders? Where's the leaders? I've met 5 leaders and all of them I've ever met. I mean, real leaders. And you know what? They're real people. Mm-hmm. They don't have status. They don't have position. They listen. They have conversations. They guide. And they say, make it so. Yeah. Now, you can't do that in isolation. People have to have the information. They have to have the resources, but they have to have the ability to get the resources themselves. It's amazing what people do outside of work, isn't it?
Oh,
they
yeah.
raise families,
night and day.
Coaches, they have committees, they're on social, they're on city committee. These are able people.
Yeah.
But when they walk in the door, they put on that hat.
Yeah.
And they get in their box.
Yeah,
and same with leaders. Leaders are in a box too.
Yeah.
In fact, we talk, traditionally they talk about play engagement. I talk about leadership engagement, to get back into the organization and get around and shake some hands and have talks. David Packard taught me that when I was doing an internship in Palo Alto way back in my graduate school. And I did something for Hewlett Packard, which was the reason why I wasn't even there. We were there to develop a management leadership thing way back in the late 70s, early 80s. Mm-hmm. But this was about some of their best engineers, in order to advance, had to go into management.
Yeah.
So I brought up this concept of parallel laddering, of which if an engineer took on certain lead roles or mentoring roles or other roles, then that would level off to the management that they were having problems with losing their engineers.
Oh, yeah.
Because they didn't want to go into management.
And they couldn't pay.
And we developed this program. Yeah. And the retention went up. And David came and talked, said hello to me. He heard about me. I was just a student and an intern. Shook hands. And I said, I just want an hour of your time. I just wanted to talk to you. And he just gave me so much insight in how he leadership for him. And that was worth a couple of semesters.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I can only imagine how hopeful that made you feel that you were on the right thought track, if you will.
Yeah, but tested many times. Mm-hmm. Now, all good things mean two things. One is failure, which is what I call scars. And I have scars, but I learned from them. Mm-hmm. The second thing is, I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm going to keep going.
And I
think that hits a lot of people.
No, I'm watching the clock, but I think that point you just made is important for everyone who listens to this podcast. I don't know where I'm going. Now let's go back to the beginning of the conversation when you said, let's be comfortable with not knowing where we're going next.
Right.
What does that do to you, Patrick? Not knowing where you're going, but you're going to keep going anyway. What's that feeling like?
To me, it's exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I like going there. And I've learned to like going there. I just like it because I'm me. And if I fail, I don't believe in failure because we only fail if we don't learn. It's an opportunity.
That's right.
All my foibles are my best teachers. Yeah, I'm serious about that. So they're friends of mine. All my faults are my friends because they're my best teachers and I learn from them. How can you get better than that?
Yeah.
So I've just accepted it, and acceptance is powerful.
What would you like this last minute or two to capture in our conversation about yourself, about the work, about me, about the sun, whatever? What would you? I'll give you a whole minute to add a very good thought, which you've been doing all along.
Well, I think it's for folks that are just starting out on their OD journey, and believe in yourself, look around the corner, don't choose somebody else's panacea that they're trying to market to you. Find your own way, work with your clients. Don't think you need to have the answers. Your clients will find the answers. Ask good questions, open up doors to explore, and believe in your journey. And your journey will take you to a place that will satisfy you, will give you a lot of life adventures. And that's what it's about. That's life, and OD isn't a straight line.
No.
There's an old OD saying, if you know the second step, you're not doing OD.
I'm going to have to cap it off on that, but I can't thank you enough. It's a delight to meet you.
Well, David, you're very nice and you are magnificent.
Well, back at you.
Hopefully it's something that brings some value to someone.
It sure will. That was Patrick Trottier, founder of the Institute of Emergent Organizational Development and Emergent Change. And you can find his writings and more on emergentchange.net. Thanks for listening to the Practice Podcast, where we discuss practice with a capital P. If you'd like to hear more, listen in on Spotify, Automatic, and Apple Podcasts, or go to inactionresearch.com/podcast-page. And if you'd like to learn more about social inaction and the nature of practice, head over to inactionresearch.com for more information. Thank you for supporting this show. We look forward to hearing from you soon.